Hey everybody, it's Jim and welcome back to another lesson of Introduction to Korn Shell. Today I want to go over what happens when you define a variable inside of a function and then try to access that variable outside of the function. So this is our program and it shows how variables get defined in a function. Here's our function right here. Once again, you use the Korn Shell command function, and then you give the function name, and now F4 is equivalent to anything in between these two curly braces. And inside of the curly braces is nothing more than a variable definition, which just says x is equal to Bob. Now, just a reminder, this right here is just the definition of F4. The code inside of F4 does not actually get executed at this point in time when we define the function. So right here, right after this curly brace, we have actually not run this command right here which says x is equal to Bob. So at this point, this variable does not exist. So here's our code. First thing we do is we are just printing before calling F4, and we try to look at what x is. At this point, because we haven't called F4, the variable x is actually unknown. So this value right here should be empty. So when we run the command, run this script, we should see x is equal to single quote, single quote. Then we just print a blank line for readability. Now we call F4, and once again, what this means is just take everything that was in between those curly braces and plop it down right here. That's basically what that means. And inside those curly braces was x is equal to Bob. So what you will have here basically is x is equal to Bob. So now x is defined. We just have another print statement saying after calling F4. And now we try to find out what the value of x is at this point. It should be Bob. And then we print another blank line. Now we change x. This should say after changing x, not F4. We print the value of x. It should be Sanderson. We print another blank line. Now we call F4 again. Inside of F4 is the statement x is equal to Bob. So basically that gets plopped right here. So after this call of F4, x should now be Bob again. After a second calling of F4, it should be Bob. And then we just print a blank line. So let's run this. And before we called F4, our variable x was undefined, as we thought it would be. And after we call F4, our variable is equal to Bob, because that is what we set it to inside of F4. Then we changed x to be Sanderson, and after changing x is Sanderson. We then call F4 again, which should set x back to Bob. So after the second calling of F4, x is Bob. So two things here. One, obviously x is undefined at this point. So make sure that you define a variable before you try to use it. And if that means calling the function F4 beforehand, then do so. Or you could have simply defined the variable x outside of F4 before you accessed it. Also, the other thing you have to note is that we changed x outside of the function, and then we called the function again, and that reset the value of x. So be careful when you call functions if they set variables inside of them.